Thank you, thank you, thank you. There's a lot of slides, so I'm going to blast through this so that I could get to the best part, Q&A. All right, so we're starting a little bit later. I want to buy us some time, and please ask away as soon as I get there. So if we can go to the next slide, actually go back really quick. Today we're going to talk about in-camera VFX, bridging two worlds. Thank you. Here's a little session overview. First, I wanted to talk about our approach to virtual production. Then we're going to go through what is the virtual art department, case studies, and a process, a breakdown. Thank you. If we go to the first slide, we've been a part of a few in-camera VFX projects. This is some of the highlights. Amongst the ones that you don't see there are some of the projects from Marvel and Netflix that are coming up. But we've worked on both scripted and unscripted in-camera VFX projects, and they both have different challenges. Scripted especially have different challenges. Next slide, please. So what is our virtual production approach? And I think we really used our as on purpose because everyone has a different approach and every project needs a different approach. So this is our approach. Please move forward. And here it is. So something that's important to note, anything with the yellow bubble is where we like to empower people. And so often people ask us at one point we like to come in. And one of the first things that we recommend people to do is a shoot methodology at the beginning, which is just getting the script, breaking out how you think you would like to do it. After that stage, we're ready to jump on board. So you'll find that after the story beat with the director and writer and producer, we often like to help the production designer with concept art. Right after that, we empower the key creatives with a meeting where they're going to break down those scripts, and that's right there, the bubble with the key creatives. And there's a cyclical workflow between the key creatives, the VAD and TechViz, and the art department. That is what we specialize in. That cyclical process is what we use to reduce waste. When we have key creatives in pre-production, it allows us to create or get as close to the final content as possible. But if you see in this chart, we have that VAD design and TechViz is a huge bubble because it serves as a place for all the different departments to interact and from there send the blueprints to the other teams. This is something we could share later. Thank you. Move on to the next one. So what is the virtual art department? The virtual art department mirrors the art department, only that it uses real-time tools and teams. But what is our approach to the VAD? Now, I wanted to show a chart that really is a comparison between the art department and the VAD. And it's pretty small here, so I'm going to talk through it. But we really aim to mirror everything that happens in production, only that virtually and remotely. So just to share the comparisons, in the blue bar at the top shows the art department, and the yellow at the bottom shows the VAD. At the beginning, you have 2D concept arts. That's something that we still need in the VAD, so that sticks. But after that, the comparison of a model maker in the Unreal Engine world is a 3D layout artist. As we move forward, you have those set designers. We have Unreal Environment artists for those. A lot of our production designers come from a location scout background, so we also created virtual location scouting so that they could follow that same pipeline. And of course, the DP, like he's here to do camera blocking and pre-lights, we also replicated that virtually. Now, at that stage, that's the design stage, a review happens, and it goes into production. One of the things that we are trying to help people understand is the separation between design and asset development. Those final pixel sets, there's a lot of work that has to happen in design around the agreement and the conversation between the director, the production designer, the DP, and the VFX supervisor, where if you don't get that design stage and get those people involved, you might fall into a situation where there's last-minute changes, and there goes your contingency budget, right? So in this chart, we really are showing how there's a design stage, and then at the next stage, just like physical production, typically there's a set construction stage. Now, the comparison of that, or the equivalent of that in our VAD, is the asset development stage of taking that design and taking it to the next steps. All that has to happen before the shoot in camera VFX. And so that's why we showed this chart. If we go to the next one, please. Thank you. Now, how are we using virtual production? We are really just using virtual production as a tool to connect different teams. You could have a VAD that doesn't use virtual production, but just uses the real-time engine. And this is what we try to tell every team. It really is based on how they want to work. Now, oh, sorry, go back one. Now, the teams that we're most aware of are the story team, the design team, VFX, game development, and camera. Game development being the tech itself. These are the 5 teams that we're also always looking at helping communicate. And of course, each one of those teams have different creatives. The story team is the director and the writers and the actors. The design team is our production designer and our set decorators. The VFX team is our VFX supervisor and producer. Game development and engineering is the tech itself, now that we're using real time. And the camera team is your DP and your gaffers. So we host sessions with all of these individuals at once. And we try to do that on a weekly basis so that everyone has visibility and there's no surprises by the time they get to the shoot. Thank you. Now, facilitating the conversation between these decision makers mean replicating their workflow. So here we wanted to share how and what we have created for these different creatives. Now, you have the production designer. In a traditional workflow, you might have a production designer that, or actually, most certainly, if the production designer is building sets, physical sets, almost every day he'll go on a stage walk. And he'll go and he'll visit those stages and we'll talk to the set decorator and he'll look around. I really wanted to replicate that virtually for the environments. So we have a review process for the production designer called virtual stage walks. This could be a screen share or it could be a VR headset we send to his home and he gets to do these things with one of our creatives that's helping him drive it. We also have virtual scouts. Once you have that individual experience with that production designer, virtual scouts are typically planned for traditional projects as well. They would line up, let's say you need to go to a church and a park and the other scene. You would plan a day where you're going to scout those environments with your DP, production designer, your writer, basically all those people that you need, the decision makers. That's a traditional workflow. That's another one that we wanted to replicate. So you'll find that the way we do that is by sending multiple people their computers at home and they meet up on the cloud so that they could shoot and work the way they're used to. Now, how do we apply it to the cinematographers? We have virtual pre-lights, virtual camera, and then VFX supervisors also have their own process around TechVis. Thank you. Now, our approach to remote reviews. Remote reviews are more important than ever. Everything is moving really fast, and I find that when we join projects, the amount of reviews that are necessary aren't accounted for. If a team down here, that the guys doing the work are moving 10 times faster, it does mean that they need potentially reviews to happen 10 times faster. So one of the things that we work with our teams is coming to agreements around meeting in the cloud, and we've created a multitude of tools so that they can review in the same way they would traditionally. So if you're a production designer and you're used to walking on a stage, we're going to give you a process where you're going to walk on the stage, if you're a DP, et cetera. So it's important, I find, at this point, to lower the barrier of entry by customizing these tools and allowing them to engage with this pipeline. Thank you. Huh? Next one. So we're really working hard to have virtual production setups everywhere, anywhere. And you could have a setup at home, and the way that the setup at home works is we ship these out to different individuals, and we host these virtual filmmaking sessions remotely. Sometimes we have upwards of 50 people in these sessions because you have the actors, the writers, everyone involved, but the people driving it are your key creatives. Your DP, your DP already had some pre-lights that he put in there. Your production designer have found the hero areas. Your writer is communicating how they want to write into the tech because they have them there to see if it's possible. So this has been one of the most valuable sessions that we found on every production, and although virtual production and using headsets is something that people gravitate to, it's not needed. It's really about accounting for those reviews and the creatives being there, but don't get blindsided by the tech. You could also just have it as a screen share. Now, what is happening in these scouts, right? It really is, again, a workflow that mirrors traditional production so that those creatives could engage. There's no time to teach some of these DPs that have decades of experience a new workflow. We want them to apply what they've learned and what they've done for decades at times into the tech. So that's what we're doing with these remote reviews. Here is an example, and I don't know if this has audio, but here's an example of something we did for the Academy Awards where we were explaining the process. And can this play? So this is something we did for cinematographers. This is the shot that we created, and this is not previs, and it's also not VFX. It's a combination of both. One thing that I experienced when I was doing previs was a lot of people telling me that the work that I was doing was throwaway because the previs was informed by the director, but of course, once the DP and the production designer come on board, they're going to want to give their feedback. That's one of the main things I wanted to do, reducing waste by getting those individuals on board so that the work that sometimes 5 previs artists were doing over months wasn't throwaway. And this is an example of that. In this project, we were working with some of the Mandalorian crew, just a lot of the brilliant minds that understand this pipeline to show how the work that used to be considered previs is now actually the final shot and the final set. And those key creatives that are working in there are actually designing the thing that's going to be created by the physical and virtual teams, sometimes a year in advance. And it's the same shot that comes out the end. And that's really important. So here, actually, let's keep this here really quick. As you can tell here, we have Andrew Jones in a headset, and he's working with another person in the top right. Oops, sorry, if we could keep it playing. If you want to throw it to the middle, a little bit after, it's okay. Get it. Thank you. So here, there's one person, actually, the art director driving at our company, Safari. He is listening to Andrew Jones giving these notes and doing the notes live. Andrew Jones is the production designer on The Mandalorian. And so we can have a DP in here placing cameras and doing lighting changes, and a director giving drawing in 3D space all at the same time. All it takes for those key creatives to engage with this tech is showing up to a computer in their home and putting a headset on, and we're already in there waiting for you, ready to do whatever you like. And we've created a multitude of tools to be able to support them so that they can feel welcome. So here's here they are. The art director here is showing the set, and this is the actual shot that came out at the end. So I think here we're going to show the final shot again. So that's the shot out of the VAD, and this exact set was what was used to get the final shot that's coming up. And we did this with Lux. I don't know if he's here, but Can you start the beginning of the video really quick? I just want to show the final shot. All right. We're all about planning production. So here, this is the shot. This exact set, which we created with all those decision makers, is the one that comes out of the end. Phil. All right, thank you. Next slide. So I want to just hop through a couple different examples of what we've done. Mandalorian Season 1 and 2. All right. If we could full screen this, please. So here's an example of some of the tech viz that we created with all those decision makers. And some of these scenes and environments are created months. I mean, we're starting sometimes, I mean, it's like 8 months in advance, right? So if you see this, these were scenes that that are so close to the final content, and the only way to get that and not get the last minute changes is by having those decision makers in pre-production come to the agreement. And by giving them the tools that makes them confident in agreeing to the thing they're gonna do sometimes a year later. So that's why the virtual scouting tools are so impactful. Sometimes you do need to get them into that world and just have them stand in it and do it the way that they are used to so that they can have the confidence to make those decisions. That's one of the things we are here to do. It's helping them make those decisions. So here we're showing some of the tech viz that we put together and then the final shots. Like right here, we have an environment that we did in the VAD. And then that's the tech viz that we created. The blue lines are the actual LED volume intersecting with the Unreal Engine environment. The yellow is the physical set. And so here's the final shot. But once again, look at how close the lighting, the mood, the environment, and even if you're gonna send this to another team to take it further, they're not assessing the camera. They don't have to worry about the mood. They could focus on asset development and know that the intention of the scene has already been figured out by those decision makers that are on board. Next one, please. Well, I think we gotta. Thank you. All right, we got a little stuff up here, but it's okay. If you could go back one. F11. All right, next page, please. So here's an example. The one at the top right is one that we did in the VAD. And the one at the bottom is the final shot. Once again, all the architecture is extremely similar, even the lighting. Having a director of photography work with us at this stage months in advance makes it for everyone down the road. It makes it where you'll have you have a higher focus for everyone down the road. Typically, production designers and writers, they're thinking really big. But once you have that director of photography and they lens, you're able to get really close to where you're looking for. Thank you. I really wanted to point out that there's a huge back and forth between all the departments that needs to be accounted for, the art department, VAD, DPs, and VFX. And here's a follow-up breakdown to how they created that scene. Top right, we have a BTS shot, the final shot, and then bottom right, we have how they went about that creation. Here's another example. If you see at the top right, that's the VAD shot that we created way in advance. Part of what we're accounting for in that VAD shot is what's physical, what's virtual. So you'll notice that the foreground isn't very high resolution because it's real. So it's not needed. So we used it as an approximation, but at the bottom right, you'll notice the final shot. And that was real. So the background trees, the background assets are, in fact, the same assets than the ones in the VAD. Here's an example of Why Women Kill. Why Women Kill was something that was really interesting, if we want to click play on that really quick. So I think there's a perception that this tech is for in-camera VFX, but it's really just to plan films. This is a project or TV series where they didn't use ICVFX, but we used it to create all the VFX shots. And you'll notice that's our pass and the VFX passes. Look how similar that is. So we planned all of the VFX scenes. We created all the assets and all the same assets, and all the planning around where the green screen is going to be, et cetera, was quite accurate. Something that was really cool with this project as well was that while they were shooting it, they actually had a laptop open with the Unreal Engine scenes, and the directors and the creatives could just literally use it as reference. So it's not, you don't need huge, expensive tech to get the benefits of virtual production either. Sometimes less is more. Thank you. Oh, one back. Sorry. And we wanted to show a VR project. We actually worked on this Jurassic World VR, and we were porting over all of the assets from the actual ILM assets into the engine. It was one of our first times where we realized that Unreal Engine was actually getting to the point where we could actually use it for film. And it was a great opportunity for us to work on it. Thank you. Next one. And of course, you could work on this tech with all different styles. If you haven't seen the trailer for Supergiant Robots, please check it out. We worked on some of the effects. But we're going to skip through this one. Thank you. Just to get to FatHead. Perfect. So Project FatHead. Now I want to go a little bit deeper into the breakdown of this project. Next one. So when we joined Project FatHead, I met with Ben Baker in a hotel room in New York, and they had a lot of grayscale work and a little bit of tech viz, but it wasn't accounting for the physical and virtual, and there was a lot of work that we really saw an opportunity in an area where we can help. So we grabbed those grayscale sets, and within 5 weeks, we pumped out something like 3 different environments, and there was a shoot. So this is a proof of concept that we wanted to share that is not at the scale of The Mandalorian. It's indie. It was 5 weeks to work, and it worked out because ultimately we came to an agreement with the different decision makers in pre-production so that by the day, they were getting what they were looking for. Here's an example of a final shot. If you go to the next one, please. Press play. So I want to show first the VAS sets that we created, which you'll see here. Oh, so here's the final shot, which I thought came out quite beautiful. And afterwards, we're just going to show the sets that we delivered for them, which were the ones they used on the day. One of the biggest challenges with this project was all the photogrammetry and because of the time constraint, coming to the agreement around what was going to be in what shots. If you go to the next one, thank you. So the first one is the final shots, and then these are the sets that we delivered. Now, something to note is a lot of people ask me, how do you know when something's final pics are ready for the stage? The only way to know is to look through the lens. When you look in Unreal, and even in traditional VFX, there's a lot of waste. Like I've seen for a long time, environments being created and then fog goes in front of it, and then you look at it and you're like, man, we just created all those assets. It's by having those creatives in pre-production and knowing the lensing and knowing the fog, you're able to account for how far to take something before the day. And that's a big mission of ours. It is reducing waste. It is finding ways to focus people where it matters. Sometimes, most of the time, the DP is going to use really out of focus shots. And so by having them involved, you get those savings. Oops, next one, please. Cool. So here's an example of the final shot and the in-camera VFX ready Unreal set. And as you can tell, it's the same exact world. Now, when I look at this image in the bottom right, if I was just going to critique that set, and look at it through the lens without knowing what the DP was going to do, I would take that a lot further. It looks gamey, but when we started lensing it, we realized that there was no point in taking it further, that it was getting us the final shot. And if you look at the top right, the midground is real, and the background is our set. So this is an example of something that, this is how you're able to amortize your costs and or find savings across the film. How did we do it? VAD phase 1, set design and tech viz. So during the set design process, we're looking at helping the art department gestating ideas and getting us reference. And so they also typically have set designers, so that's stage 1. From there, the virtual art department is there to support them with virtual set design, managing the back and forth between DPs, VADs, art departments, and VFX, and the virtual reviews and tech viz. Now, here we have a page without context, but to the right, to the right, you'll see that it's just showing some of the design process, right? You have your grayscale part, you have your color part, and then you have a final part. It's very similar to what we're used to with traditional VFX. World review process. Reviews are everything. Going back to enabling the conversation between the different key creatives. During those remote reviews, they're critiquing a couple things. The sets. And you'll see here some of the decision makers for the sets. Production designer, set decorators, art directors. The lighting, the camera, the story. The story's missing the writer. The tech viz. So when we're doing these reviews, we're actually accounting for all these different moving pieces as we're designing the set. It's not separate, it's the same. And before going to the next stage where we are gonna take it to that photoreal quality, we do wanna make sure, as often as possible or whenever we can, that there is awareness around those different stages. Here's one of my favorite pictures from Mandalorian Season 1, because this was an environment that was in Unreal, and then traditionally, right, you print it out, and then you continue planning. So this is those yellow areas, we represent those yellow areas in Unreal. Those are your hero areas. That's where you're gonna create your sets. It's your physical part of the sets. Everything else outside of that yellow might be VFX, might be in-camera VFX, traditional VFX or in-camera VFX, but I really like that image. Now, I really wanted to talk about the role of the director here, which is about reviewing the areas, the action, and the story. There's a lot of tools virtually where you could draw in 3D space, and it allows those directors to drive the team. The production designer is there to do their virtual stage walks, is there to do their virtual location scouts, but the production designer is the most important role in this pipeline. If your production designer isn't aligned and can't get those sets for the shoot, you're gonna incur twice the cost. Because all of a sudden, if it's unexpected, which is the scariest thing, then you're going to have to redo those shots in VFX, and that's one of the saddest things to say. So really, the production designer is essential to the pipeline. The production designer, in my opinion, makes or breaks the process, but we're finding more ways to empower those production designers so that they don't need to know all of the process. They could just show up and do what they're good at. And the DP, if the production designer is the make or break guy, your DP is there to narrow in the scope. DPs, in all the projects that I've worked with prior to this tech, come in really late. And the reason they come in late is because they're there to do pre-lights typically, and it takes time for that production designer to create those sets so that the DP could come in and pre-light them and give his story around it. That could happen sometimes 6 months in is when the DP comes in and he's critiquing sets. We're just showing you right now a process where that production designer is going to have sets for the DP to light within the first 2 weeks. So you're moving up sometimes productions that would happen 3 to 6 months later, where DP would join then, up to the very beginning. And that's one of the biggest reasons why DPs should be joining in pre. They're also the guys that help you narrow in the scope. Your writers are gonna think like this. They're going to write a world that is like almost impossible to create because that's what we love. The production designer is going to come in and he's going to put pretty pictures to it. Now, those pretty pictures are also built with a very large lens. I mean, you don't often see concept art that's out of focus using a 90 because then you're actually talking about the character and sometimes, typically, they're building the worlds. When the DP comes in, your world goes from this to this. Because all of a sudden you have, if he's having the conversation with all the decision makers, especially the director and the production designer, he can lens the film and he can help you find what those hero areas are before it goes to previs, before it goes to VFX, before it goes to all physical production. He can play in Unreal and he can use an iPad VCam, iPad virtual camera to work through the space, or he could literally just sit with, like we have virtual gaffers now where they light those sets with him. What we're finding is that with time, those virtual gaffers and those camera tools, they can replicate the DP and now they have their influence on every single scene and every single environment. So DPs are amazing. They're here to narrow in the scope and it's very important to have them on board if you want something that's attainable in budget. And the VFX supervisors, I say that the VFX is the backbone of the entire process. Ultimately, when all these guys don't pull it off, if they don't, VFX is the guy that is responsible. And that's why it's super important to have them on board. I've been in so many meetings where there's a conversation about doing it with ICVFX, and thanks to the VFX supervisor being there and informing that it's easier for him to do it in his world, you're able to really cut down the costs. There's times where VFX is the best way to do it, and we don't want to rule that out. They're super important to the pipeline. Thank you. This is a crazy freaking graph that we put together, but this is our set creation pipeline. Now, all the way up to the yes or no, it's design. And this is all the stuff that are happening before it goes to production and post. First off, you have the key creatives doing methodology meetings to assess if they want to go with VFX, or if they need to go to a country on location. Then you have the art department doing sketches, set design, set decoration, but there's a crossover. The purple is the VAD. The VAD is going to empower the art department with virtual stage walks and with photogrammetry, because your set decoration needs to go into the virtual world now if you want it to blend seamlessly. So photogrammetry is something that we bring into the design stage with the production designer. Right here in the purple, and what I'm trying to show here is, people always ask, how do you reduce waste? This is how. Every stage during the gray model, there's a cyclical process. Virtual Scout and VCam happens, and after every single stage, there's a meeting. Is it ready to send to the next stage or not? And in that meeting, you have all those decision makers. I have seen so many decisions around those decision makers where, or they'll look at something and you think you have to take it five times further, and the DP just goes, no, I understand the scene. Don't even touch it. Send it to the next team. I'll pick it up, right? So there's, without having them there and without this stage, you're going to keep building, because obviously if I'm an environment artist, I want to do the best work I can. But this is about doing the least you have to get to where you need to get. So after every stage, in the gray model, we do virtual scouts and virtual cameras and prelights, and we send it to review. We do it again at the virtual set design once we have it a little further, and we do it again in virtual set decoration. We see a lot of models from the gray model stage go straight into the stage, because sometimes it's mostly sky. Sometimes it's mostly like it's a prop that you could pull out in a week. And this is why we show this. Now, if it's a no, like, is it ready to send to the next stage? If it's a no, it could either go back to the VAD, or maybe you just need to send it to an asset development team to just take the assets further, because you've already gotten all the intention, the mood, the important aspects from those decision makers, so that the rest of the team, they just need to make it prettier. That's it. And sometimes it's good enough straight from the design to go to the stage. We're seeing this happen more and more often, especially when there's a strong asset library for you to source from and a strong understanding of what the DP wants when it comes to lighting, et cetera. All right, next page, thank you. The tech viz. So the tech viz, actually, I probably would have put this one before that chart. The tech viz is part of what's needed for that review. You don't want to, we try never to show up to the review without like an understanding of what's actually being created, and or we find that the decision makers always talk about how to do it. It's not just what they're trying to achieve, but also how they're going to do it. So here we just want to show some examples from FatHead. If you notice here, this is the Unreal Engine environment, but then, excuse me, we have right into the microphone. We have hero areas, right? So there could be several hero areas in an environment. And so the yellow represents what the physical is versus the rest of it is virtual. So over here, you can see that, this is what they were going to build, and then the backdrop is part of that final shot that we had. Thank you. Now, what is TechViz in this context? TechViz is quite different, in my opinion, than it used to be. When I was a previous artist, I worked a lot with directors. And so previz, in my opinion, was very focused in the mind of a director in an animation, breathing life into animation so that they could budget it and then know what was going to be created. Now, there was a major component missing there, which is the other key creatives, because people kept coming back to me and going, hey, but I'm going to just grab these environments and change them because the production designer isn't involved and those decision makers that would make those calls. So now, all of a sudden, you do have all those decision makers in the room. And that's the major component that's different. This TechViz is keeping into account all those roles, and it's really hard to change it later for that reason. How am I in time? Perfect. I'm gonna close this out. Let's go to the next one. I started a little late, so one of the things I wanted to close out with the design stage around this, it's that it's not previz, it's not VFX, but it's a hybrid of both. VAD TechViz helps decision makers design as closely to the final content as imaginable, reducing waste and last-minute changes. Next one. Now, the second phase that we follow is an asset development phase, which is the equivalent to a physical construction stage. And so one of the things that you do before this stage is that you assess what needs to happen. So you grab the TechViz, you grab the cameras, you grab the set decoration, and you assess how much needs to be done. That's how you budget it out. So one of the things you assess is what is the photogrammetry, another one without words. Go to the next one, please. And I'm going to move on to the next stage. So after you created the world and you've developed those to the photorealistic quality, you want to move towards a final lighting and optimization pass. And the way we do this is by doing tests on the actual stage. So here we have some of what is assessed when we go to a stage. What are we looking for? We're looking to review the architecture, the set decoration, if there's any lighting tweaks that have to happen, or camera placement. And this is a conversation and a back and forth that happens between the stage and the VAD. We're doing reviews on the stage, often of even grayscale models, so that you can look at it and assess how far you have to take it. All right. This is a little bit of exercises that we do for set decoration. Set decoration is a major component to this process. And so some of what we've done on productions are sandbox exercises where there's always a sandbox that has sand, the foliage that's going to be used. Just in general, every major component that would blend in with the stage, we often have available for us to test and replicate in the VAD. And so this is actually, I don't have enough time for this, so we're going to skip through this. Let's keep going. For the final stage, strong TechViz and reviews reduces waste by building what is needed. Strong agreements ahead of the shoot is needed to reduce last-minute changes. This is just rehashing some. And I just wanted to end it with this video that we put together from Boba Fett. I don't know if this has audio, but if it doesn't, that's fine. Can we full screen it, please? So on Boba Fett, we really honed in on a lot of the skill sets that we needed to be able to get the virtual art department further. By Boba Fett, we have been collaborating for years with ILM and Lucasfilm Productions. So of course we have a huge asset library. And so there were 25 different worlds, 80 plus variants of those worlds. We had a team of photogrammetry people working directly with the set decorators. We did 100 plus lighting scenarios. We placed hundreds of cameras with the DPs. All that data went to the other teams. And so these are sets, VAD and final shot sets, that show how close we're getting, sometimes a year in advance, right? And so these are some of the VAD sets that were created in the process we just spoke about, with all those creatives in those meetings, doing what they do best. What comes from it is that it doesn't remove control. It actually allows those creatives to design and get what's essential on the day. But by the time they get to the stage, they could redo those shots if they wanted, because it's real time. So I find a lot that creatives are afraid of the tech, maybe because they feel like it's going to restrain them and lock them in. But I was a previous artist for 10 years at the third floor, and this pipeline is very different in the sense that it won't lock you in because it is real time, because you will be able to change it on the stage if you have the right team and the right agreements in place. You need to have the right team. So here's some of the shots. That's some of the shot from the VAD. The right is the final shot. I mean, it's really getting to a point now where virtual production is, in my opinion, most valuable at the design stage, where it allows you to come to these agreements. And I think this is a representation of what you can get, which is extremely close and pre. I'm going to open it to Q&A.
Alrighty, do we have any questions out there? This happens all the time, actually. They're just awestruck. Michael?
Thanks for that. That was great. How do you find in the design process going from 2D to 3D? Because traditional concepts, like you say, are usually done 2D. Is that an easy process, or like, I don't know, how do you approach that?
I find it testing. I find it quite valuable to collaborate with that 2D team and to get into 3D as fast as possible, because the faster you throw spaghetti at the wall, the better the meal is going to be. And so often they're working in 2D, but it's not the camera angle that the production designer is looking for, or the camera angle that the DP is looking for. So you throw a couple 2D concepts, you throw a little 3D team to work with those key creatives, and then that concept artist could then focus on the actual scenes and the shots that those key creatives are thinking about. So it's very much a collaborative effort. Yeah.
I have to say, you guys were amazing. We really threw you under the gun on FatHead. I think, what did you have, like 3 weeks to get to Final Pixel for us?
Something like that. That's about right. I think we ended up delivering everything in a total of 5 weeks, 3 different worlds, multiple different set variants. Once again, this is a script-driven project, but because they were allowing us to create the asset library, we were able to just furnish and focus on set decoration.
Yeah, and prior to that,
and lighting.
We were probably working on 3 of these major asset builds for about 5 months prior to that, and then you guys just ran with it, sprinted. So.
Yeah, I think when we started, I was very aware of the time constraint and the fact that the sets were grayscale still, and they had to shoot in pretty much a month. So I feel like this is an achievement in general, because people are always asking, is this tech only for the sci-fi Mandalorian scale projects? And this is a good example of something that where if you have a team that understands how to reduce the waste and not take it past the finish line, then you could hone it in and get it done on time.
Totally agree. Other questions out there?
Thank you, everyone.